Hello. Today we're going to talk about pronunciation. Pronunciation plays an important role in communication. And when someone speaks English as a second or a foreign language, or indeed as a first language, their pronunciation is often one of the first things one notices. Many second language users of English aim to learn how to speak English with an accent close to those used by native speakers of English. But others may feel comfortable speaking English with an accent that reflects features of their first language, speaking with a Chinese, German, or Mexican accent, for example. They may have no wish to change their accent in English since they feel it reflects their cultural identity. However, sometimes a learner's pronunciation may make comprehension difficult, and teaching strategies are needed to address aspects of the learner's pronunciation that impede successful communication. While comprehensibility and fluency may be a primary goal for many second language learners, their pronunciation of English is also an important aspect of learning English, since pronunciation may affect both how easy they are to understand as well as people's perceptions of them. Now, when people learn English, they have to make decisions about the kind of pronunciation they wish to acquire. Will it be British, American, Australian, or a mother tongue influenced pronunciation? And the messages they want to send through the way they speak English is an important part of pronunciation learning. In English language teaching, the importance of pronunciation has changed according to different views of the nature of language learning. It received a strong emphasis in the oral-based methods that were adopted in English language teaching in both the US and the UK during the first half of the 20th century. From that older tradition, by the latter part of the 20th century, an approach to teaching pronunciation had become established that involved an emphasis on accurate pronunciation from the earliest stages in language teaching, through a focus on the distinctive sound features or phonemes of a language. And these were the core focus of a pronunciation syllabus. Drills, particularly minimal pair exercises and guided pronunciation exercises that focused on individual sounds as well as features of rhythm and intonation, appeared in classroom materials and in recorded materials that supported pronunciation teaching in the language laboratory or in the classroom. From the 1960s, there was a changed orientation to pronunciation, which was now understood from the perspective of communicative competence rather than, if you like, linguistic competence. Now, attention shifted to the nature of pronunciation in discourse and to its role in casual and formal speech and in face-to-face communication. The scope of pronunciation teaching also expanded to consider its role within the interactional dynamics of the communication process and how it reflects the speaker's sense of identity. The theory of communicative competence also questioned the positioning of phonological accuracy as a target in learning English, and contrasted this emphasis with the ability to participate in fluent language use without necessarily using target language phonological norms. The role of English as an international language has also refocused interest on the role of pronunciation in teaching English. In the 1970s, the target for learning was assumed to be a native speaker variety of English, and it was the native speaker's culture, perceptions, and speech that were crucial in setting goals for English teaching. Native speakers had a privileged status as, if you like, owners of the language, guardians of its standards. Today, however, local varieties of English, such as Filipino English and Singapore English, are firmly established as a result of the process of indigenization. And even in contexts where English is a foreign language, there's less pressure to turn foreign language speakers of English, for example, Koreans, Mexicans, or Germans, into mimics of native speaker English, whether that be an American, British, or Australian variety. I think the extent to which a learner seeks to speak with a native-like accent and sets this as his or her goal is a personal one. It's not always necessary to try to eradicate the phonological influences of the mother tongue, nor to speak like a native speaker. The linguist Professor Jennifer Jenkins, in her work, has argued that what we call received pronunciation, or RP, the standard British accent of older materials, is both an unattainable and an unnecessary target for second language learners. And she proposes a phonological syllabus that maintains core phonological distinctions, but is a reduced inventory from received pronunciation. She also points out that RP has very few speakers today. She suggested that some features of standard English are very difficult to master and do not play a crucial role in intelligibility. These include some weak forms, vowel quality, connected speech, some aspects of word stress, rhythm and pitch movement. And these features are often included in traditional pronunciation courses and materials. But Professor Jenkins, based on her research on interactions between non-native speakers, has described them as non-core, not essential. She suggests that in teaching pronunciation, the focus should be on an international core for phonological intelligibility, a set of unifying features which at the very least has the potential to guarantee that pronunciation will not impede successful communication in settings where English is an international language. The core would consist of those features of pronunciation that are central to mutual intelligibility in contexts of cross-cultural communication. And this would be a more realistic target for teaching and learning than the full inventory of features of standard native speaker pronunciation. Let's turn now to some common pronunciation problems that we experience when teaching students. Most errors of pronunciation result from substitutions or omissions of sounds due to differences between English and the learner's mother tongue, and often to misplacement of stress in words, for example, such as pronouncing democracy as democracy. Pronunciation can distract from the speaker's message and confuse the listener if words are mispronounced. Using glow instead of grow or pact instead of fact can at times cause confusion, although the context or situation in which words are used often makes comprehension possible despite what might seem to be serious errors of pronunciation. Another feature of learner pronunciation often results from simplification of consonant clusters, for example, saying damish instead of damaged. And these simplifications can sometimes make for difficulty in understanding. Mispronunciations of this kind should be addressed earlier rather than later in a course, since once they've become established, they're often difficult to change, as fossilization may have occurred. Mispronounced words can also elicit a negative reaction, and some may even suggest a stereotype of the speaker's cultural background, such as the L and R confusion in very nice or flied lice. It's important to remember that the goal of pronunciation teaching is not necessarily to remove a learner's accent, but to address those features of pronunciation that the learner may wish to change and which can interfere with his or her message. Familiarity with the stress and rhythm of spoken English, as well as knowing how to pronounce the words a speaker wants to use, these can help students develop both fluency and confidence in speaking. A speaker who's uncertain or confused about how words are pronounced is likely to speak haltingly and to have difficulty grouping words into chunks that characterize fluent speech. A further issue is the models of pronunciation that have been provided by English teachers, many of whom have possibly acquired English as a second or foreign language and may not have fully mastered many features of English pronunciation. For example, if both the teacher and the students omit many final consonants and consonant clusters, or regularly mispronounce common vowels or consonants due to the influence of the first language, it's not surprising if these characteristics are unlikely to disappear from the learner's English. Teachers clearly need to be able to provide good models of pronunciation for their learners, particularly if the teacher's speech is the learner's primary source of contact with spoken English. In cases where the teacher has not fully mastered the features of English pronunciation, greater use should be made of recorded text and other sources of non-teacher generated input, such as videos and electronic resources. So to sum up, Pronunciation, like other areas of language teaching, has followed the general direction of the field, moving from a focus on individual sounds to a more complex understanding of communication and intelligibility. In comparison to the teaching of other aspects of language, the methodology of teaching pronunciation has not changed substantially in recent years, and pronunciation activities in current teaching materials and courses continue to focus on both controlled and communicative practice of segmental and suprasegmental aspects of pronunciation. A growing range of technological resources is now available to support the learning of pronunciation, providing support for both learners and teachers. What has changed, however, is our understanding of the goal of pronunciation teaching, with recognition that mimicry of native speaker pronunciation is not always a feasible or desired outcome. The goal is rather to help learners develop fluent and intelligible speech, and to help learners overcome pronunciation problems that affect comprehension or that elicit negative attitudes. Pronunciation doesn't always receive the attention it needs in English courses due to the perception that it's difficult to teach, and that in heterogeneous classes it's difficult to determine priorities. However, well-developed pronunciation activities can have a considerable impact on students' abilities to communicate effectively in English and to become confident and fluent speakers.